A long, long time ago, the New Forest was originally run by the Aten, who had the power to make the forest fruitful and the land profitable. Rufus the Red's father, William the Conqueror, was a greedy man who hunted and killed all the Aten with bows and arrows to have the prosperous land to himself. However, not only did the land go to waste upon their deaths, but rumor had it that before the last of the Aten died, they unwound a spell in the forest that any king that entered would die the same death, and only the blood of a king could undo the curse. Rufus the Red, who has reigned on the throne since his father, William the Conqueror's death in 1087, was about to meet an untimely death. Henry I, younger brother to Rufus and next in line for the throne, was jealous that his brother was king and not he, and did not approve of him nor the way he ran the country. He put together a party of his most trusted men that included himself and his right-hand man, Walter Tyrrell, and planned a stag hunting party in the New Forest. Although no one had ventured far into the forest since the Aten's curse, because all they had spoken of was that the inside did not appear as it did from the outside. Tyrrell and the others convinced Rufus to be brave and have nothing to fear. There was no magic. Curses were not real, knowing he, Henry, would leave the forest one way or another to be crowned the new king, but safely because he would have not yet gone through the crowning ceremony. Because legend says only a king will befall the arrow's curse in the New Forest. Later that day, the hunting party emerged, all except for Rufus, who they claimed had befallen the Aten's curse of an arrow through the lung in the New Forest. They sent back men to retrieve the body and mark the location where it occurred. When the men returned with his body, the arrow that had pierced his lung was mysteriously missing, and all anyone could speak of were rumors of how Henry had his brother killed to gain the throne. Or had he shot the fateful arrow himself? Or was it really the Aten's curse? The arrow never resurfaced, and so with the king's death, they decided to commemorate their beloved king with a beautiful stone they called the Rufus Stone, right on the spot where he perished. The blood from the king returned the New Forest to its original fruitful glory, and people no longer feared entering it, for the curse seemed to have been broken. Oddly, Walter Tyrrell seemed to mourn Rufus's death the most. Townsfolk reported seeing him visit the Rufus Stone nearly every day at sundown. Suspicions began to arise and questions were asked. Was this an act of guilt and remorse, or was it something else entirely? The year is now 2018. William the Conqueror, Henry I, and Rufus the Red's descendants emigrated to Melbourne. Victoria became an extremely successful winemaker, having a penchant for the red grapes. They cleverly called themselves Rufus Wines, drawing on the legend of their family's famous history. One day in early May, they got a call that a castle in England belonging to William II had been left to their family, thus unraveling a mystery and secret that had been kept hidden for 918 years. Siblings Nick, Cinthia, Josh, and DB packed up and traveled across the continent to see what this inheritance was all about. They arrived and met with the estate's executioner, who gave them a letter that reads, "You have received the red calling, and it is you who must once and for all find and expose the truth behind what happened to William II on the fateful day he took an arrow and perished in the New Forest. As a reward, you will receive the gift of his fruitful land. Look in a place that only someone who knows things of red would ever think to look to find the clues you need to solve the mystery behind his death and set the truth free. Honor thy ancestors with this truth." Always being adventurous since they were young, they were up for the challenge of unraveling whatever mystery Rufus's family had been holding to all these years, waiting for the right generation to come along and solve it. Lucky for them, they had received the calling of the red grapes. They spent their days cultivating the vines, for it was grow season, not harvest season, and the loyal staff departed with the sudden death of the castle's owner. May passed by, then June was ending, and July was fast approaching when they literally stumbled into a wine barrel that rolled upon being knocked into. Since they all knew that red wine ages in barrels for several months, they wondered why this barrel would be empty among all the other full ones. Thinking they may have found the clue that they had so desperately been seeking, they pried open the barrel, which contained a journal and an arrow. Since evening was approaching, they sat down around the table for a meal, with a great bottle of red, to read aloud the contents of the journal and decide what to do with the mysterious arrow. Although due to the age and condition, they suspected they knew which arrow they held, for it was splintered and contained a dark stain. The journal was fading and handwritten, and dated year 1099 by Sir Walter Tyrrell himself. In it he spoke of a sordid and secret love affair with a member of the royal family. one that may never be allowed to be shared openly, and one that they both knew could never be confessed to for fear. For his lover was none the other, Rufus himself. The last entry was dated August 2nd, 1100, where Sir Walter spoke of the great sadness for he felt being privy to Henry's plan to lead Rufus to his death, but being more afraid of sharing his love for Rufus than of warning him of the plan, hoping that the intense curse would come true, and by spilling the blood of the king, the curse would be broken and Henry would ascend to the throne. And if that did not happen on that fateful day, that he, Tyrrell, was expected to serve Henry, and being known for his marksmanship, was expected to pierce an arrow through his lover. The one thing the journal never did reveal was which outcome occurred. Now it was left to the siblings to find a way to solve the 918-year-old mystery, for it was the key to inheriting the ripe, red land for themselves and expanding their winemaking empire. Meanwhile, becoming heroes for solving this ancient mystery and finally being able to reveal the love story between their ancestor, the jealousy and complicitness of Henry, whether or not the Attend may have once existed in the forest, and who killed Rufus. They trekked out to the Rufus Stone and sketched out the scene where the murder took place. They got special permission from the pole of the will's executioner to have Rufus exhumed so they could have an anthropologist examine him to be certain of the arrow's strike and to squab his bones for trace evidence, such as pollen, to be certain he was killed at the site marked by the grave. And they had DNA testing run on the arrow to see if there was transfer in the splintered off pierce from the person who loosed the arrow itself. The anthropologists concluded that Rufus did in fact die of an arrow through the lung, as legend had it, and that the swabs taken showed no reason to suspect that he died anywhere other than by the site marked by the Rufus Stone. Therefore, the crime scene sketch was relevant to establishing he died as legend had it, and all they had to do was wait for the DNA. 3 weeks later, on July 27th, they got called in to the executioner's office with the news of the results and to discuss their findings to see if they were going to be the rightful owners of the castle and its vineyard. The DNA was not human, clearing Tyrrell and making them the rightful owners of Castle Red. The siblings went on to write a short story to explain the truth of the tale of Rufus and the New Forest that they told on castle and vineyard tours. They named their wines things like A Clever Shot in the Dark and Tyrrell's Rufus Stone, honoring their love story. In an effort to foster a place where prejudice does not live, they give half of all their profits from the wine, the tours, and the overnight guests to LGBTQ-friendly organizations all over England. Now, it can never be said whether people believe that a giant Yaten killed Rufus, but guests of the castle, vineyard employees, and even the siblings claim to hear unnaturally loud footfalls in the nearby forest. The end.
Many years back when these old oaks were young, not long after the Northmen had come, a low and evil deed was done in the dark of the New Forest, in the dark of the New Forest. From the shores of Normandy King William came to Albion fair King Harold to slay. With greed in his heart and a scurrilous claim, he took the land for his own. He took the land for his own. Now John was a blacksmith, an honest old man. He raised up his children and he worked with his hands, and his family's forged in a patch of land in the dark of the New Forest, in the dark of the New Forest. King William rode out after his victory to ravage the land and his hunger to feed, for hunting grounds in the Wessex trees. He took the land for his own. He took the land for his own. But if you steal the land of an Englishman, then you shall know this curse. Your firstborn son's warm blood will run upon the English earth. Now King William's son was called Rufus the Red. He took up the crown when his father was dead, and he roamed the hunting grounds in his stead, in the dark of the New Forest, in the dark of the New Forest. But John's curse it called out, and Lord Tyrrell fired low. His arrow struck Rufus with a sickening blow, and he fell from his horse to the ground below, and the land took him for its own. The land took him for its own. So if you steal the land of an Englishman, then you shall know this curse. Your firstborn son's warm blood will run upon the English earth. Many years back when these old oaks were young, not long after the Northmen had come, a low and evil deed was done in the dark of the New Forest, in the dark of the New Forest.